Hey there. Tonight we're diving headfirst into an exhilarating journey back to the heart of the Viking Age, a legendary era teeming with intrepid explorers, master craftsmen, and formidable warriors who fearlessly navigated the tumultuous seas. They sought not just riches and new lands, but the enduring glory that would echo through the sagas for generations. Before we embark on this epic voyage across time, take a moment to prepare your surroundings. Find a soft, inviting blanket to cocoon yourself in. Gently dim the lights, allowing shadows to dance and deepen around you. Perhaps even light a beeswax candle, its flickering glow casting a warm, primal light that perfectly complements the ancient world we're about to explore. This immersive tale is best experienced when you're utterly relaxed, your mind open and receptive. So, inhale deeply, let the tension melt from your shoulders, and exhale slowly, releasing the modern world. Prepare to be utterly transported to a realm that was both breathtakingly beautiful and brutally harsh. A world where mere survival demanded unparalleled strength, sharp wit, and a raw courage far exceeding anything required in our comfortable, contemporary lives. Congratulations. The world as you know it has dissolved. You've just awoken in the late 8th century, somewhere along the craggy, wind-battered coast of what would one day be known as Norway. The specific year is 793 CE, a date etched in the annals of history, and you find yourself in a reality utterly alien to your own. The air, thick and bracing, carries the distinct aromas of briny sea salt, pungent wood smoke from countless hearths, and the sharp, clean scent of towering pine trees. In the distance, the ceaseless rhythm of powerful waves relentlessly crashing against the unyielding, rocky shores forms a constant, deep bass note, harmonizing with the piercing calls of gulls and other seabirds wheeling in wide circles high above, their cries sounding both wild and melancholic. You slowly blink your eyes, struggling to adjust to the perpetually dim light that stubbornly filters through the smoke hole in the thatched roof overhead, a single aperture that serves as both chimney and window. You're lying on a hard, unyielding wooden bench, rough-hewn and without a trace of the plush comfort you're used to. This is the interior of a longhouse, a central dwelling that functions as both a communal home and a vibrant gathering place for an entire extended family, sometimes even several families linked by blood or marriage. Furs, perhaps wolf or bear, and thick, hand-woven woolen blankets offer a meager cushioning against the crude timber. But it's a far cry from the soft, memory foam mattress you're accustomed to. The ingenuity of this structure, however, is remarkable. Its clever design ensures that the precious heat from the central hearth circulates efficiently throughout the entire space, keeping the chill of the northern climate at bay. The downside, if you can call it that, is the constant, intimate proximity to not just your fellow humans, but also to clucking chickens pecking diligently at the earthen floor. And during the most brutal, unforgiving winter nights, even larger livestock, a cow or a few goats, might be brought inside for warmth and protection, adding their own distinct smells and sounds to the communal living. The longhouse stretches out before you, an impressive cavern of timber and earth. Its wooden walls, constructed from massive planks, curve inward and outward, mimicking the robust hull of a seafaring vessel, creating a sense of organic strength. Stout wooden posts, rough and unadorned, rise from the packed earth to support the heavy thatched roof, a complex weave of straw and sod. Between these posts, hanging in orderly rows, are burnished shields, wicked-looking spears, and an array of everyday tools, axes, adzes, hammers, all meticulously cared for. You quickly realize that here, everything serves a pragmatic purpose. There is simply no room for purely decorative items, in a world where every object must contribute directly to the intricate dance of survival and practicality. A faint, ruddy glow emanates from the smoke hole directly above the central hearth, where the last embers of last night's fire still hold a whisper of warmth. As you push yourself into a sitting position, your muscles ache with a profound stiffness from the unyielding wooden sleeping surface. You wince, a reminder of the stark physical realities of this age. A woman, her golden hair intricately braided and coiled like a crown around her head, glances toward you. Her hands, strong and capable, stir something fragrant in a heavy, soot-stained iron pot suspended over a freshly stoked fire, its flames now licking eagerly at the cooking vessel. She wears a simple, ankle-length dress of undyed, coarse wool, softened by time and wear, with a vibrant, colorful apron-like garment layered over it. This apron is fastened at her shoulders by two ornate silver brooches, connected by delicate strings of beads that catch the faint light. Around her neck, resting against the homespun wool, hangs a small, distinctive hammer-shaped pendant. Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, you realize with a jolt. A potent symbol of protection, strength, and the thunder god's blessing. "You've slept long enough," she says, her voice firm but not unkind. To your astonishment, her words are perfectly intelligible, though the accent is rich and ancient. A strange, unexplainable linguistic bridge connects you to this past. There's work to be done before the men return from fishing. You rub at your eyes, still heavy with sleep, a profound sense of bewilderment washing over you. How, you wonder, will you ever manage to assimilate into this world, so profoundly different from your own? Everything around you seems to exist in a disquieting duality, both achingly familiar and utterly alien. The simple wooden furniture, the sturdy tools hanging on the walls, even the comforting smell of porridge simmering over the fire, all possess a subtly foreign quality, an ancient edge that serves as a constant, stark reminder of just how impossibly far from home you truly are. Outside the longhouse, a symphony of voices rises and falls, their melodic cadences mirroring the rhythmic ebb and flow of the waves on the fjord. Children's laughter rings out, clear and uninhibited, as they chase squawking chickens along the muddy paths winding between the clustered buildings. Dogs bark excitedly, their rough barks echoing the enthusiasm of their young masters, whom they faithfully follow. Through the open door, you catch glimpses of other longhouses, their roofs sending thin plumes of wood smoke curling gracefully into the crisp, invigorating morning air. Beyond the settlement, the majestic, shimmering expanse of the fjord unfolds, its deep waters holding several longships at anchor. Their dragon-headed prows, intricately carved and painted, seem to watch over the community with silent, ancient sentience, guardians of both trade and conquest. "Here," the woman says, breaking your reverie, holding out a wooden bowl. It's filled with a thick, steamy porridge. "Eat quickly. There's wool to be spun, bread to be baked, and the goats need milking." You accept the bowl, feeling its comforting warmth seep into your chilled palms. The porridge, made from barley and oats, is bland, earthy, and undeniably filling, with just a faint swirl of honey to sweeten it. As you eat, you notice others in the longhouse beginning to stir, sleepy-eyed children rubbing the last vestiges of slumber from their faces, and an older woman already diligently working at a loom in a far corner, her hands moving with the practiced ease of long years. "My husband, Leif, and the others sailed out at dawn," Astrid continues, her gaze drifting toward the open door, a touch of concern in her eyes. "They hope to catch enough fish for the coming feast. The Jarl has called all free men to his hall in 3 days' time to discuss the summer raids." The summer raids. The words, uttered with such casual matter-of-factness, send an involuntary shiver down your spine, a cold sensation that pierces through the longhouse's warmth. You've woken up at the very precipice, the dawn of what history will forever define as the Viking Age. Somewhere, far across the tempestuous North Sea, the isolated monastery at Lindisfarne stands utterly unaware that this year, 793 CE, will be the year when those fearsome, dragon-prowed longships arrive on their unsuspecting shores. This will mark the brutal, undeniable beginning of an era of unprecedented exploration, burgeoning trade, and, undeniably, widespread violence that will fundamentally reshape the face of Europe for centuries to come. Astrid, whose name you now know, sets you to work with a spindle, patiently demonstrating how to draw the raw, unruly wool into a fine, continuous thread. Your fingers, accustomed to keyboards and touchscreens, fumble awkwardly with the unfamiliar tool, tangling the fibers. She clicks her tongue, a sharp sound of impatience. "Have you never spun before?" she asks, her brow furrowed. "Even a child knows how to do this." She takes the spindle, her strong, skilled hands moving with practiced, fluid motions, transforming the wool effortlessly. "What kind of household did you come from that you don't know such basic skills?" You mumble something vague about being from far away, a convenient and ambiguous excuse that, for the moment, seems to satisfy her curiosity. She eyes your strange, brightly colored modern clothing with a flash of suspicion, but, perhaps sensing the futility of further questioning, she doesn't press. "Well, you're here now, and everyone works," she states firmly, her gaze steady. "That's the way of things. We survive together, or not at all." That unequivocal statement, you realize, encapsulates life in this demanding era more succinctly and truthfully than anything you've ever read. In the Viking Age, survival is not an individual endeavor. It is an absolute, collective dependency on community. Each person must contribute their unique skills and labor to the welfare of the entire settlement. There are no convenience stores, no hospitals, no safety nets beyond what the interwoven fabric of the community itself can provide. If the crops fail, if the fish migrations become scarce, relentless hunger inevitably follows. If raiders descend from neighboring, rival settlements, every able-bodied person must rise to defend their home or face the devastating loss of everything they hold dear. As the day progresses, you shadow Astrid, following her through her myriad tasks, slowly, painstakingly learning the harsh yet strangely satisfying rhythm of daily life. The good news is that, contrary to some prevailing stereotypes, personal cleanliness is surprisingly highly valued among these people. The Vikings, you discover, are actually quite fastidious compared to many of their European contemporaries. On a weekly basis, typically on Saturday, which they fittingly call Laugardögur, or washing day, everyone bathes, a practice that would be considered an excessive luxury in many parts of medieval Europe. The bad news, however, is that nearly every single aspect of daily life, from dawn until dusk, involves intense, unremitting physical labor. Merely preparing a simple meal requires painstakingly grinding grain by hand with heavy stone querns. Fetching water from the well is a constant, back-breaking chore. Maintaining the central fire and cooking in heavy cast-iron pots is a perpetual task. Making cloth, a foundational necessity, begins with shearing sheep, then spinning the raw wool into thread, weaving it on a loom, and finally meticulously sewing it into garments, all done by hand, often in the dim, flickering light of the longhouse. Even the simplest medicines must be prepared from herbs gathered in the wild, identified, and processed according to generations of orally transmitted knowledge. By midday, your back aches with a profound, unaccustomed protest, and your soft, modern hands are raw and blistered from the unfamiliar work. Astrid notices your discomfort, a slight, almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips. "You'll grow stronger," she says, her tone not unkind, simply stating a brutal truth. "Everyone does, or they don't survive the winter." Winter. The word, in this context, carries an entirely new, heavy weight. Without central heating, without the comforting glow of electric lights to push back the encroaching darkness of the long northern nights, without modern transportation to bring food from warmer, distant regions, winter here is not merely a season. It is a formidable test of preparation, an arduous trial of physical and mental endurance, and an ultimate crucible of community cohesion. As afternoon gently approaches, a clear, sharp horn blast sounds from the distant shore. Astrid instantly straightens, her head cocked, listening intently. "They're returning," she says, a subtle relief in her voice. She sets aside her weaving, moving with unhurried purpose toward the door. "Come, let's see what they've brought." You follow her out into the bustling settlement, where people are already emerging from their longhouses and workshops, all converging toward the narrow, wooden dock where several boats are now pulling in. These, you observe, are not the massive, dragon-prowed longships you might have expected. Those fearsome vessels, the pride of the fleet, are reserved for longer journeys, for ambitious trading expeditions, and, of course, for raids. These are smaller fishing boats, still skillfully made from sturdy timber, but designed for the more prosaic task of coastal fishing rather than open ocean voyages. Men call out hearty greetings as they deftly secure their vessels, holding up strings of glistening fish to appreciative cheers from those gathered on the shore. Children, unburdened by adult worries, run eagerly to meet fathers and brothers, excitedly peering into the boats to see the day's catch. Dogs bark with unrestrained enthusiasm, darting between legs, sniffing hopefully at the fresh fish being unloaded. Leaf, a tall, powerfully built man with a reddish beard, now streaked liberally with the first touches of gray, raises a hand in greeting when he spots Astrid. His arms are thick with muscle, a testament to years of relentless rowing and hauling nets. His face is deeply weathered, etched with lines from constant exposure to the unforgiving sun and the biting sea winds. He appears to be in his late 30s, perhaps early 40s, but it's genuinely hard to tell for certain. Life in this era, you realize, ages people with a brutal efficiency far swifter than in your own time. "We had good fortune today," he tells Astrid, his voice a deep rumble, as he hands her several large, gleaming cod. "The sea was generous." "Njord smiled on you," she replies, referring to the Norse god of the sea, winds, and fishing, acknowledging the divine favor. Leif nods, then lowers his voice conspiratorially. "Bjorn's ship returned while we were out. He brought news from the south. The Franks are growing weaker, divided between brothers fighting for power. Their coastal monasteries are unguarded, he says, and filled with gold and silver." Astrid's expression, previously relaxed, instantly turns serious. Her eyes meet her husband's. "You're thinking of joining the raid, aren't you?" Leif glances toward you, his eyes registering your presence, perhaps for the very first time. "We'll speak more of this later," he says, a subtle warning in his tone, before turning to help the other men unload their weighty catch. The air, though still smelling of salt and fish, now carries an undercurrent of something new and dangerous. You follow Astrid back to the longhouse, where she immediately sets to work preparing the fish with the effortless efficiency of long practice. With practiced motions, she fillets them using a sharp iron knife, setting aside the choicest portions for immediate cooking and hanging the rest on racks near the fire to be smoked and preserved for later. "Here," she says, handing you a smaller, sharp knife of your own and pointing to a pile of vegetables, onions, carrots, and something that looks like turnips, earthy and robust. "Cut these for the stew." As you work alongside her, the steady rhythm of the knives and the crackle of the fire filling the silence, Astrid begins to talk. Perhaps she senses your deep-seated curiosity about this strange, ancient world you found yourself in, a need to understand. "My husband is a good man," she says, her knife never pausing in its work. "A respected man in our community. He has a boat of his own and land to farm. We have 4 children who lived past infancy. We are blessed by the gods for that." You learn that 3 of their children are now grown, 2 sons who have established their own families, and a daughter who married a man from a neighboring settlement. Their 4th child, a boy of 12 named Eric, is currently helping his father with the boats, already learning the skills of the sea. "But Leif dreams of more," Astrid continues, her voice dropping slightly, even though you are the only 2 people in the longhouse. "He hears the stories from those who have sailed to distant lands, who have brought back silver and thralls." The word thralls, you realize with a jolt, refers to slaves, human beings captured during raids and brought back to work the farms and households of the Norse. A chilling practicality to human life and liberty. "Do you think he'll go?" you ask cautiously, attempting to sound informed rather than utterly ignorant of their customs, yet intensely curious about the impending events. Astrid sighs, a heavy sound, as she tosses the prepared fish into a large iron pot. "Men seek glory and wealth. It's in their nature. And times have been difficult these past few years. Poor harvests, harder winters. Many believe that raiding is the answer, that the gods favor those bold enough to take what they need." As evening approaches, the longhouse gradually fills with more people. You meet Eric, a skinny boy with his father's reddish hair and bright, inquisitive eyes, who watches you with open curiosity. Several neighbors arrive, bringing their own contributions to the communal meal. Freshly baked bread, a ceramic jar of fermented milk that tastes something like a tart, hearty yogurt, and small bundles of berries preserved from last summer's harvest. The longhouse resonates with the rising hum of conversation and laughter as people share news, gossip, and familiar stories. Leif and several other men sit near the central fire, their voices low and intense, discussing lands across the Western Sea, monasteries rumored to be overflowing with treasure, and the undeniable glory that awaits those brave enough to venture into unknown, dangerous waters. You notice how the youngest men lean forward eagerly, their eyes bright with vivid visions of adventure and instant wealth, while some of the older, more experienced warriors look more cautious, their faces lined, carefully weighing the considerable risks against the glittering potential rewards. "The Jarl says we'll need at least 4 ships, one man says, stroking his neatly trimmed beard thoughtfully. "Enough men to overwhelm any resistance quickly." "And good weather," adds another, a grizzled old sailor. "The Western Sea can be treacherous, even in summer." "The priests at these monasteries," a young man points out eagerly, his voice filled with a mix of excitement and disdain. "They're not warriors. They won't fight back." "Don't be too certain," cautions an older man, a long, angry scar running down one side of his face. His voice is low, gravelly. "Any man will fight when cornered, and their god is powerful, so they say. Different from our gods, but powerful nonetheless." The conversation shifts, becoming more practical, focusing on the minutiae of the expedition, how many men each ship will need, what provisions to take, the optimal time to depart to catch favorable winds and tides. You listen intently, a profound realization dawning upon you. You are witnessing, in real time, the meticulous planning of what might well be one of the earliest Viking raids on the British Isles. An event, small in its initial scope, that will set in motion a chain of consequences, irrevocably transforming the entire course of European history. Later, as people begin to depart for their own longhouses and the communal fire dwindles to a warm, whispering glow, Leif approaches you directly for the first time. His presence, even in repose, is commanding. "Astrid tells me you're from distant lands," he says, studying your face intently in the flickering, unsteady light of the dying fire. "Yet you speak our tongue." You fumble for an explanation, something vague enough to sound plausible in this ancient context. "I've traveled far," you say, carefully, choosing your words with precision, "and learned many languages along the way." Leif nods slowly, a slight, almost imperceptible tilt of his head, seemingly satisfied with this ambiguous answer. "A traveler. Perhaps you've seen the lands we speak of, the kingdoms across the Western Sea." When you hesitate, unsure how to respond, he continues. "No matter. If you stay among us, you'll need to contribute. Can you work wood? Metal? Do you know healing herbs? Can you fight?" The last question catches you entirely off guard. In your time, most people navigate their entire lives without ever needing to physically defend themselves. Here, it is simply another necessary skill, as fundamental as cooking or farming. "I'm willing to learn," you offer, your voice perhaps a little too eager, too desperate to prove your worth. Leif studies you for a moment longer, his gaze piercing, before finally nodding. "Good. Tomorrow, you'll work with Gunnar the smith. He always needs someone to work the bellows. Hard work, but you'll earn your keep." As you finally settle back onto the hard wooden bench for the night, your body throbbing with aches from the day's unaccustomed labor, your mind races, a whirlwind of everything you've experienced. The Viking Age, you realize, is nothing like the romanticized or brutalized caricatures you've seen in books or on television shows. It's not all glorious battles and daring raids. In fact, most of daily life revolves around the relentless, exhausting work of survival, growing food, crafting tools, producing clothing, and maintaining shelter against the unforgiving elements. Yet, underneath this ordinary, grinding rhythm of daily tasks, a powerful current flows, something restless, an almost primal hunger for more than mere subsistence. You've sensed it in the way people speak of lands beyond the horizon, in the profound pride they take in their sleek, innovative ships, in the captivating stories they tell around the communal fire, of ancestors who sailed into unknown waters and returned with unimaginable wealth and wondrous, unbelievable tales. As sleep, heavy and welcome, finally begins to claim you, your last conscious thoughts are of the daunting journey ahead. You've survived your first day in the Viking Age. A small victory, but far harder tests undoubtedly await. Tomorrow brings new challenges, new skills to master, new dangers to navigate. And beyond that, looming on the horizon, is the summer, and with it, the raids that will launch the Viking Age in earnest. An era of exploration, conquest, and profound change that will irrevocably reshape the world for centuries to come. In the utter darkness of the longhouse, with the last embers of the fire casting faint, dancing red light on the sturdy wooden beams overhead, you drift into dreams filled with images of magnificent dragon ships sailing toward distant, unknown shores, their carved prows cutting through the waves like knives through cloth, bearing men seeking fortune, eternal glory, and a coveted place in the immortal songs that will be sung for generations. Morning arrives, not with a gentle alarm, but with the insistent clarion crowing of roosters and the soft, ethereal glow of dawn filtering through the smoke hole. You are already learning that in the Viking Age, people generally rise with the sun and seek their sleep when darkness falls, a natural, unyielding rhythm dictated by necessity rather than personal choice. The longhouse stirs to life around you as Astrid efficiently builds up the fire, coaxing new flames from the embers, and begins preparing the morning meal. Today, as promised, you are to work with Gunnar the smith. After a breakfast of leftover fish stew, its flavors now richer and deeper, and a chunk of dense, chewy bread, Leif leads you through the still waking settlement to a small, robust building set slightly apart from the others. Even from a distance, you can hear the rhythmic, authoritative clanging of metal on metal, a deep, resonant sound that vibrates through the very ground. You can also feel the intense, palpable heat radiating from the open doorway of the smithy. "Gunnar," Leif calls out as you approach, his voice cutting through the clangor. "I've brought you help for the day." The smith straightens from his work, his massive form a silhouette against the forge's glow, setting aside a glowing, red-hot piece of metal with a clatter. He is, indeed, a mountain of a man, massive, corded arms that could fell an ox, and a chest like a barrel, hardened by years of strenuous labor. His thick, dark beard is singed in places, a testament to countless flying sparks, and his forearms are a roadmap of burns and small, intricate scars, the indelible marks of a lifetime spent at the forge. "This one?" Gunnar asks doubtfully, his deep-set eyes sharp and assessing, raking over you from head to toe. "Doesn't look strong enough to work the bellows for an hour, let alone a day." "Everyone starts somewhere," Leif replies with a shrug, unperturbed by Gunnar's bluntness. "And we need those axe heads finished before the ships depart." Gunnar grunts in acknowledgement, a low, rumbling sound, then gestures for you to enter his domain. "Come then, let's see what you're made of." Leif leaves you in the smith's capable, if undeniably intimidating, hands. The forge is a deceptively simple structure, stout wooden walls on 3 sides, with an entirely open front to allow heat to escape and welcome the natural light. The heart of this space is the forge itself, a clay-lined furnace where charcoal burns with an intense, bright orange ferocity, fed by a pair of large leather bellows. These bellows pump a steady stream of air, raising the temperature high enough to make even stubborn iron pliable. "Your job is simple," Gunnar explains, pointing a thick, scarred finger toward the bellows. "Essentially, a large leather bag attached to a wooden frame with handles. When I say pump, you pump. Steady rhythm. Not too fast, not too slow. The fire needs to stay hot, but too much air can ruin the metal. Understand?" You nod, a lump forming in your throat, and he positions you at the bellows while he returns to the piece he was working on, what appears to be an axe head, glowing an angry red from the forge. He places it precisely on his heavy, pitted anvil and begins hammering with practiced, powerful strokes, each blow shaping the metal with a precision born of years, even decades, of experience. "Pump," he commands, and you begin working the bellows, pulling and pushing the handles with all your might, forcing air into the hungry forge. It's far harder than it looks. The unexpected resistance in the ancient mechanism surprises you, and within minutes, your shoulders and back begin to ache with a fiery protest from the repetitive motion. Sweat beads on your forehead, not just from the exertion, but from the intense, suffocating heat radiating from the forge. Gunnar works methodically, almost ritualistically. He heats the metal, hammers it into shape, then reheats it again. You notice he doesn't use many tools: a heavy hammer, a pair of tongs, a punch for making holes, and a few specialized iron implements for specific shaping. Yet, With these humble, rudimentary tools, he creates objects of both surprising beauty and deadly, unquestionable functionality. Strong weapons mean survival, Gunnar states, his voice low but clear, noticing your intense interest as he plunges the red-hot axe head into a barrel of water. A violent hiss of steam erupts, momentarily obscuring his silhouette. A poor blade breaks when you need it most. A good one saves your life. Throughout the morning, you learn that smithing, in this culture, is considered as much a magical art as it is a practical one. Gunnar murmurs words over certain pieces, prayers or ancient charms to the gods, especially to Thor, the thunder god associated with strength, and to Odin, the Allfather, who famously sacrificed an eye to gain wisdom and the knowledge of the runes. The metal remembers every hammer blow, Gunnar tells you, his calloused thumb tracing the newly forged edge of a knife blade. It remembers the fire, the water, the words spoken over it. All these things give it strength and purpose. By midday, your arms feel like heavy lead, and your back screams with a profound, unceasing pain. Yet, Gunnar seems subtly impressed that you've lasted this long without complaint. He calls for a break, and you gratefully collapse onto a rough wooden stool, while he produces a water skin and a bundle containing dried meat and coarse bread. As you eat, Gunnar becomes more talkative, explaining the intricate process of how iron is smelted from ore found in bogs or laboriously mined from the earth. He describes how it's then mixed with carbon to create steel of varying hardness, and how different weapons demand specific properties in the metal. For an axe, he explains, chewing slowly, you want the edge hard to hold sharpness, but the body more flexible to absorb shock. A sword needs to flex without breaking, while still holding its edge through many strikes. He shows you various weapons and tools in different stages of completion. Spears with socket fittings for wooden shafts, shield bosses of solid iron to protect the hand holding the shield, everyday knives, and more elaborate, finely crafted pieces destined for the Jarl's hall. The ships will need 20 good axes at least, Gunnar says, returning to work after the brief rest, his hammer once again ringing against the anvil. Not for trees, for men. The casual, almost detached way he speaks of weapons, designed specifically to kill, sends a fresh, icy chill down your spine, despite the oppressive heat of the forge. For Gunnar, and indeed for the people of this time, violence isn't an aberration or a moral failing. It is an expected, even necessary, part of life. Raids aren't viewed as immoral acts, but rather as legitimate, often crucial, means to acquire wealth, resources, and social prestige. Different times, different values, a harsh, undeniable reminder of just how profoundly far from your own modern home you truly are. The afternoon passes in an exhausting blur of intense heat, stinging sweat, and the relentless, rhythmic sound of hammer on metal. By the time Gunnar finally declares the day's work done, the sun is already low in the sky, casting long, purple shadows across the settlement. Several completed axe heads hang from a rack, cooling, their dark surfaces gleaming faintly, waiting to be fitted with sturdy wooden handles. "You did better than I expected," Gunnar admits, a rare compliment from the taciturn smith as you prepare to leave. "Come back tomorrow. There's more to be done before the ships sail." You stumble back to Astrid and Leif's longhouse, every single muscle screaming in protest, a symphony of aches and pains. Astrid takes one look at your exhausted, soot-smudged face and smoky clothing, and nods with a knowing approval. "Gunnar worked you hard, I see," she says, her voice gentle, handing you a wooden cup filled with something that smells strongly, almost overpoweringly, alcoholic. "Drink, it will help with the pain." The beverage burns going down, a fiery warmth spreading through your chest, but it quickly leaves a pleasant, numbing warmth in its wake. Mead, you realize, fermented honey mixed with herbs, a potent, ancient brew. As you sip it gratefully, you notice that the longhouse is unusually busy this evening. Extra lamps burn, casting flickering, exaggerated light on groups of women working together at various tasks. Some card wool, their hands deftly preparing the fibers. Others spin, their spindles a blur of motion. And a few work at looms, their fingers flying with incredible speed and precision, creating intricate patterns in the newly woven fabric. "We're preparing for the men's journey," Astrid explains, seeing your questioning look. "Ships need sails, warriors need clothing. Everyone contributes." You join the women, helping where you can with simple, repetitive tasks that don't require the specialized skills you haven't yet acquired. As you work, you listen to their conversation, which flows effortlessly from practical matters of thread and loom to lively gossip, and then to old tales told to pass the time and illuminate the long hours. "They say the monastery at Lindisfarne has a roof that shines like gold in the sun," one woman comments, her hands busy carding wool. "And books bound in jewels," adds another, her eyes wide. "Their god must be very rich." "Their god has only one eye, like Odin," an older woman says with an air of authority, her voice wise with age and experience. "But they say he died and came back to life, like Balder will after Ragnarok." Someone else nods, referring to the Norse god of light and purity, son of Odin and Frigg, who, according to prophecy, would return after the final, cataclysmic battle that ends the world. "Perhaps all gods are the same god," the older woman muses, her gaze distant, "just wearing different faces for different peoples." This earns her a few disapproving looks from some of the others. "Careful, sister," Astrid warns gently, her voice low. "Such talk borders on disrespect. The gods hear all." The conversation smoothly shifts to more immediate, tangible concerns. Which ships will go, who will sail on them, and what treasures might be brought back. You learn that this won't be the first time men from this settlement have sailed to distant shores. However, previous journeys were primarily for trade, for the exchange of goods and ideas, rather than outright raiding. This expedition, everyone understands, represents something new, a far more aggressive approach born of a complex mix of harsh necessity and tempting opportunity. "3 poor harvests in a row," one woman explains in a low voice, her tone tinged with worry. "And the fish not as plentiful as before. People are hungry, worried about the coming winter." "And the Jarl needs to prove himself," another adds, nodding grimly. "His father was a great leader, respected by all. His son must show he's worthy of the same loyalty." As darkness falls, more men begin to arrive, joining the gathering. Leif returns with Eric, both carrying armfuls of freshly hewn wood for arrows. They settle near the fire, Leif patiently showing his son how to shape the shafts using a small, sharp knife, carefully creating the precise notches for the bowstring and the arrowhead. Throughout the evening, more neighbors drop by, transforming the longhouse into an impromptu community workspace and vibrant social gathering. The atmosphere reminds you of an old-fashioned barn raising or a quilting bee in your own time, everyone contributing to a common, vital goal while sharing news, jokes, and age-old stories. One man produces a stringed instrument, something akin to a lyre, its clear, resonant notes soon filling the space. People sing along to familiar tunes, songs about legendary heroes and powerful gods, about great journeys and epic battles fought long ago. You notice that these aren't just mere entertainment. They also serve a deeper, crucial purpose: to teach and reinforce the fundamental cultural values of the Norse. Courage, loyalty, hospitality, and cleverness are all celebrated and immortalized in the verses. An older man with white hair, thin and wispy, and a deeply lined face that tells of a life lived fully, begins to recite a poem in a rhythmic, chanting voice. Everyone falls silent to listen, even the children who had been playing noisily in a corner, their attention now captivated. You recognize this man as a skald, a revered poet and storyteller, responsible for meticulously preserving the community's history and mythology through the potent power of oral tradition. The poem tells of the creation of the world from the primordial body of the giant Ymir, slain by Odin and his brothers. It describes Yggdrasil, the magnificent world tree that connects the 9 realms of existence, and the gods who dwell in Asgard, ruling over the affairs of both gods and men. The skald's voice rises and falls dramatically as he recounts the thrilling adventures of Thor battling monstrous giants, Odin's profound sacrifice to gain ultimate wisdom, and Loki's clever, often mischievous tricks and eventual tragic betrayal. These stories, you realize with a deepening understanding, aren't just entertainment for these people. They are a fundamental framework for understanding the world, explaining everything from natural phenomena to the complexities of human behavior. The gods and their tales provide models for how to live, warnings about the dire consequences of breaking social norms, and reassurance that there is an underlying order in what often seems a chaotic and dangerous world. As the evening progresses, the conversation inevitably turns to the upcoming raid. The Jarl, the local chieftain, has called a thing, an assembly of all free men, to discuss the plans in meticulous detail. Such meetings are the closest thing the Norse have to a formal government, places where disputes are settled, crimes judged, and important collective decisions made. "Will you go with the ships, father?" Eric asks Leif, his young face serious and earnest in the dancing firelight. Leif ruffles his son's hair affectionately. "I'll go. We need a good pilot who knows the stars and how to read the currents. And someone must look after these young hotheads who've never left sight of their mother's apron strings." There's gentle laughter at this, but you sense the underlying tension. Raiding is inherently dangerous, with no guarantees of a safe return. Everyone in the room knows that some who sail away may never come back, lost to sudden violent storms, or enemy weapons, or any of the countless other perils that await those who venture into unknown territories. "What about the farm?" Eric persists, clearly worried. "The crops need tending." "That will be your responsibility," Leif tells him, his voice firm. "You're old enough now to take a man's duties. Your mother will guide you, and Gunnar has promised to keep an eye on things as well." Eric straightens, clearly proud to be entrusted with such significant responsibility, yet a flicker of anxiety about living up to it crosses his young face. "I won't disappoint you," he promises solemnly. "I know you won't," Leif says, his voice softening, a deep affection in his tone. "You have your grandfather's good sense." Later, as the gathering begins to disperse and the longhouse gradually empties, you help Astrid clean up, gathering empty cups and bowls, sweeping the packed earth floor, and carefully banking the fire for the night. She works silently for a while, her movements precise and automatic, then speaks abruptly, her voice low. "You heard what was said tonight. Leif will go with the ships." You nod, uncertain how to respond, sensing the deeper weight of her words. "He's a skilled navigator," she continues, her hands never pausing in their work. "The best in the settlement. They need him." Again you nod, sensing there is far more she wishes to say. "I've been his wife for 18 winters now," Astrid says, her gaze fixed on the glowing embers of the fire. "I've watched him sail away many times, always fearing it would be the last. But this is different. This isn't trading with people who welcome our ships. This is taking what isn't freely given." "Are you afraid?" you ask quietly, the question tentative. "For him, always," she replies, her voice barely a whisper. "And for what this means for all of us." She pauses, truly looking into the mesmerizing embers, as if seeking answers in their dying light. "The gods set many paths before us. Some lead to glory, others to destruction. Sometimes it's hard to tell one from the other until you've gone too far to turn back." The next morning, true to your word, you return to Gunnar's forge. Your muscles protest with every movement, still sore and stiff from the previous day's unaccustomed labor. But you find that the work goes easier now that you know what to expect. The unfamiliarity has receded, replaced by a nascent understanding. Gunnar seems pleased with your progress, even showing you how to do some simple hammering on heated metal, shaping it according to his gruff instructions.
"You've got a feel for it," he comments gruffly, a rare display of positive sentiment,
which you gather is high praise from the taciturn smith.
"With practice, you might make a decent apprentice."
The idea of becoming a formal apprentice, of learning a trade in this ancient world, is both daunting and intriguing. Throughout the day, you notice a palpable increase in activity across the settlement. Men come and go from the shore, their movements purposeful, where the ships are being meticulously prepared for the arduous journey. Barrels of provisions, dried meat, flour, potent ale, and other necessities are carried down and carefully loaded, meant to sustain the crew during their voyage. Weapons are bundled and carried aboard, along with shields, brightly painted in vibrant colors to identify different groups of warriors and families. When you break for your midday meal, you walk down to the shore to observe the preparations more closely.
The longships, seen up close, are truly impressive.
They are sleek, elegant wooden vessels with high, dramatically curved prows and sterns, ingeniously designed for both incredible speed and remarkable stability in rough, open seas. The largest, perhaps 80 feet long, boasts space for about 40 rowers, seated on sturdy benches that run the length of the ship. A single mast stands ready, prepared to carry a magnificent square sail when the wind proves favorable. Men swarm over the vessels, meticulously checking every detail with painstaking care. Their very lives will depend on these ships. A single leak, a broken steering oar, a torn sail, could mean utter disaster in the vast, unforgiving expanse of the open sea. You notice that each ship possesses its own distinct personality, with unique carved decorations on its prow and individual patterns painted on its sail, a testament to the artistry and pride of its builders.
"Beautiful, aren't they?"
a voice says beside you, rich and deep. You turn to find Leif gazing at the ships with an unmistakable, profound pride that softens the hard lines of his weathered face. "Yes," you agree, genuinely awestruck. "Honestly, I have never seen anything like them." "Nor have the peoples across the sea," Leif says with a smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes, a glint of steel beneath the surface. "Our ships can sail in water shallower than a man's height and cross open ocean with equal ease. No other people have vessels like these." "Is that why you're going? Because you can?" you ask, wondering aloud about the deeper motivations that drive these people to undertake such risky, perilous journeys. Leif considers the question seriously, his brow furrowed in thought. "We go because we must," he says eventually, his voice tinged with the weight of generations of struggle. The land here is beautiful, yes, but harsh. It doesn't always give us enough to sustain everyone, and a man needs more than just survival. He needs purpose, a chance to prove his worth, to make a name that will be remembered in the sagas. He gestures toward the largest ship, its prow a fierce, carved beast. The Jarl has named her Seawolf. She'll lead our little fleet. 4 ships with 30 warriors each, enough to overwhelm any resistance quickly. Not so many that we can't make a swift retreat if needed. When do you sail? You ask. 3 days from now, Leif replies, if Thor grants us favorable weather. The Jarl makes a sacrifice tonight, seeking the gods' blessing for our journey. That evening, after finishing your work with Gunnar, you join most of the settlement's population as they gather in an open area near the Jarl's hall. A massive bonfire burns fiercely in a stone-lined pit, its towering flames illuminating the faces of the crowd, gathered in a solemn circle around it. At one end of the clearing stands a tall, wooden post, roughly carved with what you now recognize as images of the gods. Odin with his spear and missing eye, Thor with his mighty hammer, and Freyr with symbols of fertility and prosperity. The Jarl himself presides over the ceremony. He is a tall man of middle years, wearing a fine wool tunic, richly embroidered at the neck and wrists, and a heavy cloak of bearskin fastened with gleaming silver brooches at his shoulders. His beard is elaborately braided, adorned with silver rings, and he wears arm rings of twisted gold, potent symbols of his immense wealth and high status. Beside him stands a woman in a long, flowing blue dress, with a cloak of pure white feathers, a vulva, or seeress, who communicates with the gods through trance and ritual. Her eyes seem to look beyond the physical world, unfocused and distant, as she sways slightly, chanting words too low and ancient to hear from where you stand. The ceremony begins with the Jarl raising his hands toward the roaring fire, calling upon the gods to witness and bless the gathering. He speaks of the journey to come, asking for fair winds, safe passage, and success in their venture. Then he turns to the vulva, who steps forward, her face illuminated by the dancing orange flames. She begins a chant that starts low, a guttural hum, and rises gradually, her voice taking on an unnerving, otherworldly quality that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. Though you can understand the Norse language they speak in everyday conversation, her words seem to emanate from somewhere beyond normal speech, perhaps an older, more archaic form of the language, or words meant only for divine ears. As her chant reaches its peak, men lead forward an ox, a powerful, placid beast, its horns wrapped in fragrant garlands of early summer flowers. With a swift, practiced motion, the Jarl draws a knife across the animal's throat. Blood, dark and thick, flows copiously into a waiting wooden bowl held by an attendant. The vulva dips a bundle of fir branches into the glistening blood, then walks slowly around the gathering, sprinkling drops of the sacrificial offering on the assembled crowd. When she reaches you, she pauses, her gaze fixing on yours with an intensity that feels as though she is looking directly into your very soul. She says something in that strange, archaic language, a few guttural syllables, then moves on, leaving you wondering, with a profound sense of unease, what message she might have delivered directly to you. The sacrificed ox is butchered on the spot, with certain choice portions burned as offerings to the gods, their smoke rising to the heavens, and the rest prepared for a communal feast. As meat roasts over the crackling fires, horns of potent ale and sweet mead are passed liberally among the crowd. The atmosphere gradually shifts from solemn ritual to boisterous celebration, filled with the joyous sounds of music, rhythmic dancing, and the bold boasting of past deeds and glorious future victories. You stay close to Astrid and her family, feeling somewhat out of place, an alien observer in this ancient, powerful ceremony. She notices your discomfort and explains in low, understanding tones. The bloat connects us to the gods, ensures their favor for the journey. Without their blessing, the ships would be at the mercy of giants and other dangers that lurk in the deep places of the world. The feast continues late into the night, with more formal rituals interspersed with unrestrained merrymaking. Oaths are sworn upon a sacred ring, solemn promises made to share the spoils fairly, to stand together in danger, and to bring honor to their people and their gods through their courageous deeds. As the celebration reaches its height, a primal, irresistible rhythm seems to draw you in. You find yourself pulled into a dance that circles the bonfire, your hands linked with those of strangers who, for this fleeting moment at least, accept you as one of their own. The throbbing rhythm of the drums, the mesmerizing flicker of the flames, the dizzying swirl of movement, all combine to create a powerful sense of connection to something larger than yourself. A fleeting glimpse, perhaps, of what these people feel when they call upon their gods, a raw, collective energy. Later, utterly exhausted but strangely exhilarated, you walk back to the longhouse with Astrid's family. The night sky above is breathtakingly clear, stars scattered like diamond frost across a vast, black cloak. Leaf points out certain constellations, explaining how they guide sailors when no land is in sight, ancient celestial maps. The stars are the same in distant lands, he says thoughtfully, his gaze fixed on the heavens. No matter how far we travel, they watch over us, constant as the gods themselves. You look up at those ancient stars, the very same ones that shine in your own time, centuries in the future, and feel a momentary, profound connection across the vast expanse of time, a bridge between this world of powerful gods and fearless warriors and the one you've left behind. Perhaps, in some fundamental ways, people haven't changed as much as you might think, still looking to the stars for guidance, still seeking meaning and purpose in the boundless, indifferent vastness of the universe. With that comforting thought, you settle onto your wooden sleeping bench. Your muscles ache from the day's toil and the evening's dance, your mind full of the strange and wonderful things you've witnessed. Sleep comes quickly, deep and dreamless, as your body continues its relentless adaptation to the demanding realities of this new, ancient world. The next 2 days pass in a dizzying whirlwind of activity, as the entire settlement prepares with a heightened sense of urgency for the departure of the ships. You continue to work with Gunnar, your hands growing increasingly calloused from the relentless labor, your arms stronger and more resilient from working the bellows. The forge never cools, its fiery heart burning continuously as weapons and tools are meticulously crafted, repaired, and sharpened. Other crafters are equally busy. Woodworkers are shaping oars and carving new shields. Women are sewing extra clothing and preparing food that will keep for the duration of the voyage. On the morning of the 3rd day, you wake to the deep, resonant sound of a horn blowing from the shore, a long, mournful, yet exciting call. The sailing day has arrived, and with it, a palpable sense of both electric excitement and underlying tension that permeates the entire settlement. After a hasty breakfast, everyone gathers at the beach where the 4 ships wait, bobbing gently in the calm, silvery waters of the fjord. The vessels are now fully laden, provisions and weapons stowed carefully to maintain perfect balance. Shields hang along the gunwales, their bright, painted colors creating a formidable protective barrier as well as an impressive, defiant display. Each ship boasts its own animal-headed prow, fierce wolves, majestic dragons, or sinuous serpents, carved and painted figures that seem almost alive in the pale morning light, ready to guide their vessels through unknown waters. The warriors who will sail are saying their heartfelt goodbyes to families and friends. Some are solemn, their faces etched with the gravity of departure. Others are boisterous, attempting to mask their apprehension with forced cheer. But all share a common, eager anticipation of what lies ahead. Many wear their finest clothing for this departure, tunics of good wool with colorful trim, cloaks fastened with decorative brooches, and arm rings and necklaces that proudly display their status and wealth. Leif embraces Astrid tightly, holding her close for a long moment, then places his strong hands on Eric's shoulders, speaking words of encouragement and responsibility to his son. The boy stands straight, attempting to appear confident and mature, despite the tears that visibly threaten at the corners of his eyes. "Watch over your mother," Leif instructs him, his voice firm. "The farm is in your hands until I return." "I will, father," Eric promises, his voice cracking slightly with emotion. "May Thor protect you." "And you," Leif replies, ruffling the boy's hair one last time before turning and boarding his ship, his gaze already scanning the horizon. The Jarl steps forward to address the crowd before departure. He stands tall and commanding in the bow of the lead vessel, the Sea Wolf, his cloak billowing dramatically in the breeze, a polished helmet gleaming on his head. "Today we sail toward a new future," he proclaims, his powerful voice carrying across the water, echoing through the fjord. "Our ancestors have always followed the paths of the sea, trading with distant lands. Now we go further, seeking the wealth that will sustain our people through hard times. The gods have shown us this path through dreams and signs. They sail with us." A resounding cheer rises from the assembled crowd, a wave of collective energy. The Jarl continues, his voice ringing with authority. "To those who remain behind, tend the farms, care for the elderly and young. Keep our settlement strong. Your work here is as important as ours across the sea. When we return with treasure and tales, the celebration will honor all who made it possible." Another cheer, even louder, and then the preparations for departure begin in earnest. Men take their places at the oars, 30 to each ship. Others prepare to push the heavy vessels from the shore into deeper water. The ships have been loaded with meticulous care. Heavier items like food barrels and water casks placed low in the hull for stability. Weapons and personal belongings stowed under the rowing benches or along the center line. You stand with Astrid and Eric, watching as Leif takes his position near the steering oar of the second ship. He raises a hand in a final gesture of farewell, and then his attention turns fully to the task at hand, calling out instructions to the oarsmen as they prepare to depart. With a final, echoing horn blast, the ships begin to move. They are pushed into deeper water, oars extending like great, powerful wings on either side, dipping into the fjord in perfect unison, slowly at first. Then, with gathering speed, the vessels glide away from shore, their dragon prows seeming to come alive, dipping and rising as they taste the salt water. Women and children run along the shoreline, waving and calling farewells, their voices gradually fading until the ships round a bend in the fjord and disappear from sight, swallowed by the vastness of the landscape. A strange, profound silence falls over the gathered crowd as they stand watching the empty water, each person absorbed in their own private thoughts and emotions, the collective tension slowly dissipating. Astrid sighs deeply, then straightens her shoulders, her expression composed, despite the undeniable concern you know she feels. "Well," she says briskly, her voice cutting through the silence, "the fields won't plow themselves, and the goats need milking. Life goes on." And it does. With the departure of the ships, the settlement reorganizes itself around those who remain. Work that would normally be done by the absent men is redistributed. Young boys like Eric take on greater responsibilities, their childhood ending abruptly. Older men who stayed behind provide guidance, and women oversee the smooth operation of farms and households, their organizational skills proving vital. You continue to work with Gunnar, who has remained to ensure the settlement has a skilled smith for repairs and day-to-day needs. He begins to teach you more advanced skills: how to judge the temperature of metal by its subtle colors, how to create different hardnesses in the same piece, how to add simple decorative elements to functional items. "A knife can be beautiful as well as useful," he explains, as he demonstrates how to hammer a pattern into a blade, creating a ripple of light on its surface. "Beauty honors the gods who gave us the knowledge of metalwork." Days pass in a new rhythm of labor, meals, and sleep. You find your body adapting rapidly to the physical demands of this era, growing stronger and more resilient. Your hands, once soft and unblemished, now bear thick calluses that allow you to grip tools without pain. You learn to tell time by the precise position of the sun, to predict subtle weather changes by observing cloud formations and wind patterns, and to identify edible plants and berries in the surrounding forests. In the evenings, there is still time for storytelling around the fire. The skald continues to share tales of gods and heroes, each story containing embedded lessons about courage, honor, wisdom, or the dire consequences of breaking social norms. You realize these narratives serve as both entertainment and education, reinforcing the shared values that hold the community together. About 2 weeks after the ship's departure, a ferocious storm sweeps through the region. Rain pounds relentlessly on the roof of the longhouse, a drumming symphony against the thatch. Wind howls mournfully through gaps in the walls, and lightning illuminates the utter darkness in brief, blinding flashes. Thunder rolls across the sky like the sound of Thor's chariot wheels, which is exactly how the Norse interpret it. "Thor fights the Jotnar tonight," the old skald comments, his voice steady, as a particularly loud thunderclap shakes the entire building. "The giants who bring storms and destruction." Children huddle closer to their mothers, both frightened and thrilled by the raw display of divine power. Even some adults instinctively make the sign of Thor's hammer for protection as lightning strikes nearby, a quick, reverent motion from forehead to chest, then shoulder to shoulder. During a brief lull in the storm, Eric voices what everyone is thinking, the unspoken fear. The ships, will they be safe? No one can answer with certainty. Everyone knows the inherent dangers of the open sea during storms, how even the best-built vessels can be overwhelmed by massive waves or driven onto unforgiving rocky shores. Prayers are offered, both silently and aloud, for the safety of the absent warriors, their names mentioned specifically to draw the gods' attention to those in need of protection. Morning reveals the storm's damage. A few roof sections torn away, chicken coops overturned, fields partially flooded. The community works together, a unified force, to make repairs, sharing labor and materials as needed. There's no formal governance structure making these decisions. Cooperation is simply understood as absolutely necessary for survival. "This is how we've always lived," Astrid explains when you ask about the organization of work. Each family looks after its own needs first, but no one prospers if the settlement as a whole suffers. We help each other because tomorrow we may need help ourselves. This practical philosophy extends to all aspects of life. When a family's cow gives birth to twin calves, the extra animal is given to a neighbor whose own cow died the previous winter. When a child falls ill, women skilled in herbal medicine drop their own work to tend to them. When game is caught during a hunt, the meat is shared according to need rather than being claimed exclusively by the hunter. It's not a perfect system, you notice. Tensions exist between certain families, old grudges simmer below the surface, and personalities inevitably clash. But the harsh, undeniable realities of survival in this era enforce a level of cooperation that overrides most conflicts. A month passes with no word from the raiding party. This isn't entirely unexpected, even in good conditions. The journey to the British Isles would take several weeks, and the raiders planned to stay long enough to make the voyage worthwhile. Still, anxiety grows, a quiet, persistent hum beneath the surface of daily life, as time stretches on. Then, on a clear afternoon, when many people are working in the fields, a shout comes from the fjord's entrance, where a boy has been stationed as a lookout. "Ships! Ships returning!" Work is instantly abandoned as everyone rushes to the shore, straining their eyes to see the approaching vessels. A wave of profound relief washes over the crowd as 4 dragon prows come into view. All ships accounted for, all returning together, just as they left. But as they draw closer, it becomes starkly apparent that the journey has taken its toll. One ship sits noticeably lower in the water, its single sail patched in several places, a testament to the storm's fury. Another shows clear signs of recent repair to its hull, fresh, lighter wood standing out against the weathered planks around it. And on all the ships, there are fewer faces visible than departed. The vessels beach with less ceremony than when they left, warriors jumping into the shallow water to help pull them ashore. The first men to reach land are greeted with fervent embraces, tears, and rapid, eager questions. Where the answers bring good news, there is unbridled joy and laughter. Where they don't, there is the raw, sharp beginning of grief. You stay with Astrid and Eric, watching anxiously for Leif among the returning warriors. Minutes that feel like hours pass before they finally spot him, helping a limping comrade from one of the ships. Leif himself appears thinner than when he left, with a healing cut visible on his forearm, but otherwise unharmed. The reunion is deeply emotional. Astrid embraces her husband fiercely, tears streaming down her face, while Eric tries to maintain dignity despite his obvious relief and happiness. Leif hugs them both, his weathered face showing exhaustion, but also a profound, quiet pride. "You've grown," he tells Eric, measuring his son's height against his own. "And the farm looks well tended." "We had good weather most days," Eric reports seriously, his young voice filled with the weight of responsibility. "And the south field has stronger wheat than last year." Leif nods with approval, then turns to include you in the conversation. "And how have you fared in our absence? Has Gunnar worked you to the bone?" Before you can answer, shouts draw everyone's attention to the ships, where men are beginning to unload their cargo. Heavy trunks and bundles are passed from hand to hand, each item adding to piles on the shore that grow impressively large. The goods being unloaded aren't what you might have expected from raiding. There are no obvious church treasures or religious artifacts. Instead, you see practical items, rolls of fine cloth, bundles of iron tools, sacks of grain, and containers of salt. There are luxury goods as well, gleaming silver coins and arm rings, fragile glass vessels, intricately decorated weapons, and small ornaments of unusual foreign design. Most surprising of all are the people being led from the ships. About 20 men, women, and a few older children, with the subdued demeanor and simple clothing that clearly mark them as captives. These are thralls, you realize with a shock. Slaves taken during the raid, brought back to work the farms and households of the Norse. Seeing your expression, Leif explains matter-of-factly, "We need more hands for the fields and crafts. These people will become part of our community in time, learn our ways, perhaps even earn their freedom eventually." His casual attitude toward what seems to you a horrific practice is a stark reminder of the vast gulf between your modern values and those of this era. Slavery is simply an accepted part of their world, as it was throughout most of human history. The raiders see nothing wrong in taking human beings as property, just as they see nothing wrong in taking other goods that don't belong to them. The Jarl calls for attention, standing once again in the bow of his ship, now firmly beached on the shore. The crowd falls silent to hear his words. "The gods favored our journey," he proclaims, his voice carrying across the assembled community. "Though not without cost. We lost 5 good men to a storm on the outward voyage, and 3 more to the defenders of the Christian temple we raided. Their names will be remembered in our sagas, their courage celebrated in our songs." He pauses as murmurs of sympathy and prayer move through the crowd. Families of the lost men draw closer together, their grief fresh, but tempered by pride in how their loved ones died. "But our success far outweighs our losses," the Jarl continues, his voice booming with triumph. "The Christian temple at Lindisfarne was rich beyond our expectations, its treasures poorly defended by monks who know nothing of fighting. We took gold, silver, precious books, and fine cloth. We took thralls to strengthen our workforce, and we took knowledge of other such places, equally wealthy, equally vulnerable." A cheer rises from the crowd, especially from the returned warriors who lived through the experience. The Jarl raises his hands for silence once more. "Tonight we feast to honor our fallen comrades and celebrate our triumph. Tomorrow we divide the spoils according to our agreement. And when next summer comes, we shall sail again, with more ships and warriors, to claim the riches that await us across the sea." The announcement sends a ripple of excitement through the gathering. The success of this first raid has planted a seed that will grow into decades of Viking expansion throughout Europe, transforming the continent's political landscape and the Norse culture itself. That evening, as promised, a great feast is held in the Jarl's Hall, the largest building in the settlement, where public gatherings and ceremonies take place. Long tables are set up, benches arranged on either side, and food is prepared on a scale rarely seen outside of religious festivals. Some of the bounty comes from the raid itself, sacks of foreign grain now baked into bread, kegs of unfamiliar ale, even exotic spices that add new, tantalizing flavors to familiar dishes. The Jarl's wife presides over the preparation, directing thralls, both old and newly acquired, in the massive task of feeding the entire community. You attend with Astrid's family, seated at a table in the middle of the hall, where Leif's status as a shipowner and respected navigator earns him a place of moderate honor. The truly high-status seats are near the Jarl, at the head of the hall, where ship captains and the most distinguished warriors sit with their families. As the feast progresses, Leif tells his family about the journey in more detail, the challenges of navigation, the storm that nearly claimed one of their ships, the excitement of spotting land after nearly 2 weeks at sea. The monastery stood on an island, connected to the mainland only by a narrow path that floods at high tide, he explains, sketching the layout in spilled ale on the wooden tabletop. We timed our arrival for dawn, when the tide was high enough to bring our ships close, but the light still dim enough to cover our approach. Were there no warriors to defend it? Eric asks eagerly, hungry for tales of battle and valor. Leif shakes his head. Only monks in rough woolen robes. Some tried to fight with farming tools or kitchen knives, but they had no training, no real weapons. Most fled or surrendered when they saw they couldn't win. And the treasure? Astrid inquires, her interests more practical than Eric's. Plentiful, as the Jarl said. Gold crosses studded with jewels, silver chalices, boxes filled with coins. But the strangest treasures were their books, pages of thin material covered in tiny marks, bound between covers decorated with gold and jewels. The monks seemed more distressed by the loss of these than anything else. As Leif speaks, a thrall girl, perhaps 14 years old, approaches with a pitcher to refill cups at your table. She keeps her eyes downcast, her movements careful and subdued as she pours ale. You notice she has a bruise on one cheek and a healing cut on her hand, injuries perhaps received during her capture or the arduous journey back. When she reaches Leif, he stops her with a gentle hand on her arm. "What's your name, girl?" he asks in a kind tone that surprises you, given the grim circumstances of her captivity. "Ethelred," she replies in a barely audible voice, the name clearly English in origin. "That's too difficult for our tongues," Leif decides, with a dismissive wave of his hand. "We'll call you Flythe. Go now, and help with the serving. Tomorrow you'll come to our farm. You'll work hard, but you'll be treated fairly, if you obey." The girl, now named Flythe, nods silently and continues her task, moving to the next table with her pitcher. You watch her go, wondering about her story, her family, the life she had before Viking ships appeared on her shores and irrevocably changed her fate. The feast continues late into the night as alcohol flows freely. The atmosphere grows rowdier, the inhibitions melting away. Warriors reenact moments from the raid, sometimes with exaggerated flourishes and theatrical embellishments that draw roars of laughter from the crowd. The skald, ever vigilant, composes verses on the spot to commemorate particularly brave or clever deeds, ensuring they'll be remembered in the oral history of the community. Music fills the hall. Rhythmic drums, simple stringed instruments like lyres, and flutes made of bone and wood. People dance in the open space between tables, their movements energetic, sometimes acrobatic. Even children join in, imitating their elders until they drop from exhaustion and are carried to sleeping furs arranged along the walls. Through it all, the Jarl observes from his high seat, accepting congratulations and tributes from his people. His success as a leader has been undeniably confirmed by the raid's outcome, his position strengthened by the wealth he'll distribute tomorrow. In a society where leadership depends heavily on personal charisma and proven ability rather than formal titles or hereditary rights, such visible successes are crucial to maintaining power. Late in the evening, when many have already succumbed to exhaustion or intoxication, the vulva makes an appearance. The crowd falls silent, a sudden, almost eerie hush descending upon the hall. As she enters, her feather cloak ghostly in the flickering light of the hall's fires. She carries a staff topped with brass ornaments that jingle softly as she walks to stand before the Jarl. "The gods have spoken," she announces, her voice carrying clearly in the sudden quiet. "They are pleased with our offering before the voyage, and with the courage shown by our warriors. Odin welcomes the fallen to his hall, where they feast even now, as we do here." A murmur of approval runs through the assembly. The families of the dead men take particular comfort in this pronouncement, knowing their loved ones have achieved the highest honor a warrior can aspire to, a glorious place in Valhalla, Odin's Hall of Heroes. But the gods also warn us, the Volva continues, her tone growing more ominous, her gaze sweeping across the faces in the hall. Our success brings new dangers. Other peoples will learn to fear our ships, to prepare defenses against us, and some among us may grow too proud, forgetting that all victories come from the gods' favor, not merely human strength or skill. She fixes her gaze directly on the Jarl as she speaks these last words, her eyes piercing. A profound tension fills the air. Her warning could be interpreted as a subtle criticism of his leadership, a dangerous position to take publicly. But the Jarl merely nods solemnly. The god's wisdom is always welcome, he responds carefully, respectfully. We shall remember both their favor and their warning. Satisfied, the Volva withdraws, leaving the feast to continue in a somewhat subdued atmosphere that gradually returns to celebration as more ale is consumed and the music resumes. You find yourself next to Gunnar, who has remained relatively sober throughout the evening, observing more than participating in the revelry. What do you think of our Viking ways now that you've seen them? He asks, using the term Viking in its original meaning, the act of going raiding, rather than as a name for the people themselves. The question catches you off guard. It's different from what I expected, you admit cautiously. Gunnar chuckles, a rare sound from the usually serious Smith. Most things are, he observes. Tales grow in the telling, like trees from seeds. 100 years from now, who knows what stories they'll tell of this first raid. Perhaps they'll say we were giants who breathed fire and ate Christian babies. His cynical humor surprises you, suggesting a perspective more nuanced than you'd given him credit for. Do you think it was right? You ask, keeping your voice low. The raid, I mean. Gunnar takes a long drink from his horn before answering, his scarred face thoughtful in the dim light. Right? Wrong? Those are complicated words. Was it necessary? Probably. 3 bad harvests in a row. Fish stocks declining in our usual waters. People were hungry, worried about winter. Now they're not. He gestures toward the thralls serving at various tables. As for them, their lives have changed, yes. Some for the worse, at least at first. But many will eventually become part of our community, marry our people, raise children who won't remember any other life. Is that better or worse than if they'd stayed where they were? Who can say? His pragmatic view reflects the harsh reality of this era. Morality is often a luxury afforded only to those whose survival is secure. For people living on the edge of subsistence, decisions are made based on what ensures the continuation of the family, the community, the very way of life. As the feast finally winds down, you walk back to Astrid and Leif's longhouse with their family, now expanded by the addition of Fleitha, who follows silently a few paces behind. The night is clear, stars brilliant in the dark sky, scattered like diamonds across black velvet. The path is lit by the occasional torch set at crossroads in the settlement. Eric, tired but still buzzing with excitement from the day's events, peppers his father with questions about the voyage, the foreign lands, the fighting techniques used during the raid. Leif answers patiently, though you notice he softens some of the harsher realities for his young son's ears. Astrid walks in silence, her expression thoughtful, almost somber. Later, as everyone prepares for sleep, you overhear her speaking quietly to Leif near the banked fire. Things will change now, she says, her voice barely above a whisper. This success will lead to more raids, more wealth, and more danger. The world is always changing, Leif replies, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. We must change with it, or be left behind. And our children, Astrid presses, her voice heavy with unspoken fears. What world are we creating for them? Leif has no immediate answer for this deeper, profound question. He simply draws her close, both of them gazing into the glowing embers, as if seeking glimpses of the future in the dying flames. As you settle onto your sleeping bench, you reflect on how this first successful raid at Lindisfarne will ripple outward through time, setting in motion events that will transform not just Norse society, but much of Europe. The Vikings will establish settlements in England, Ireland, Normandy, and as far east as Russia and Constantinople. They'll influence language, law, art, and technology wherever they go. They'll be remembered as both brutal raiders and skilled traders, fearless explorers and determined colonizers, destroyers and builders. And it all begins here, tonight, with ships returning laden with plunder, with a feast celebrating victory, with plans already forming for the next summer's voyages. You're witnessing the birth of the Viking Age, a pivotal moment in history unfolding around you in all its complex, contradictory glory. Sleep comes slowly as your mind processes everything you've experienced. When dreams finally claim you, they're filled with images of dragon ships sailing unknown waters, with skalds singing tales of gods and heroes, with the faces of people, Norse and thrall alike, caught in the relentless currents of history, carried toward futures they cannot possibly imagine. The morning after the feast brings a more solemn, organized event, the division of plunder among those who participated in the raid. This takes place in the open area before the Jarl's Hall, with the entire community gathering to witness the proceedings. The sharing of wealth is not just about material gain. It's a public performance that reinforces social bonds and hierarchies within the community. The Jarl oversees the division personally, seated on a carved chair brought out from his hall, an emblem of his authority. Before him, the spoils of Lindisfarne are meticulously arranged on woolen cloths spread over the ground, gleaming silver pieces sorted by weight, jeweled religious objects, bundles of fine fabric, weapons, and practical items like tools and cooking vessels. According to our agreement before sailing, the Jarl announces, his voice resonating across the assembled crowd, the goods will be divided thus: 1/3 to outfit the ships and provide for the families of the fallen, 1/3 divided among all who sailed based on their contribution, and 1/3 to be distributed at my discretion to reward exceptional service. This formula seems to be accepted without question, likely a traditional arrangement that everyone understands and considers fair. The Jarl begins by setting aside the first third, which will be used for communal needs. From the remainder, each warrior receives a share proportionate to his role in the expedition. Ship captains receive more than ordinary crew members. Those who fought especially bravely get bonus items, and those who contributed specialized skills, like navigation, are recognized accordingly. Leif, as both a ship owner and chief navigator, receives a substantial portion, several gleaming silver arm rings, a finely crafted sword from Frankish lands, likely obtained through previous trade rather than directly from Lindisfarne, and several lengths of English woolen cloth, finer and softer than anything produced locally. The cloth is for you, he tells Astrid when he returns to where his family watches the proceedings. The sword I'll keep for now, but it will be Eric's when he's ready. The boy's eyes widen at this promise. Inheritance of weapons, especially fine ones, is an important tradition, both practically valuable and symbolically significant as a mark of family continuity and status. The thralls captured during the raid are also distributed, with the Jarl taking first choice of several strong men and a woman skilled in weaving, then allocating the rest according to need and merit among the other families. There's no attempt to keep families together. A mother and daughter are separated without ceremony, despite their obvious distress. Flythe, already assigned to Leif's household, stands quietly throughout the proceedings, her face carefully blank, as she watches her countrymen and women distributed like any other goods. You wonder what thoughts lie behind that controlled expression, what memories of home and family she carries silently within her. The distribution ceremony concludes by midday, but its effects ripple through the settlement for days afterward. New wealth creates new possibilities, materials for better tools, ingredients for more varied food, luxury items that elevate status. Those who benefited most from the raid, like Leif, gain increased standing in the community, their opinions carrying more weight in discussions, their friendship more actively sought by others. Summer progresses, the days long and generally pleasant in these northern latitudes. Crops grow lushly in the fields surrounding the settlement, tended carefully to ensure maximum yield. Fishing continues in the calm waters of the fjord and beyond when weather permits. Children gather berries and edible plants from the surrounding forests, adding a vital variety to the community's diet. You continue to work with Gunnar, your skills improving steadily under his gruff tutelage. The forge becomes a place of both arduous labor and profound learning, as you absorb not just techniques, but also stories and wisdom from the experienced smith. Iron remembers, Gunnar tells you one day, as he demonstrates how to fold and refold metal to create intricate patterns in a blade. Every hammer blow, every heating and cooling shapes its nature. Like people, our experiences forge us, temper us, make us strong or brittle, depending on how we're handled. Life in Leif and Astrid's household adjusts to include Flythe, the English thrall. Initially withdrawn and silent, she gradually becomes more integrated into daily routines. Her weaving skills prove valuable, and she learns Norse quickly out of sheer necessity. You notice that while she's clearly not considered an equal, Astrid treats her firmly but not cruelly, and even Eric develops a protective attitude toward her after scaring off some local boys who were taunting the foreign girl. "She's ours now," you overhear him telling the other boys, his young voice ringing with authority. "Father brought her back for our household, and no one disrespects what belongs to us." His possessive phrasing makes you wince, but you recognize that in his mind, being theirs offers Flythe protection and a defined place in the social order. It's a complex relationship that can't be simply categorized as either purely exploitative or entirely benevolent. One evening, helping Flythe carry water from the stream, you manage a private conversation away from Norse ears. "Where are you from?" you ask quietly, speaking slowly to accommodate her still developing comprehension of Norse. "Northumbria," she replies, after a cautious glance around. "My father was a craftsman at Lindisfarne. He made books." She struggles to find the Norse word, eventually resorting to a gesture of turning pages. "And your family? Were they—" She shakes her head sharply, cutting off the question. "Dead now. Better not to speak of them." Her abrupt response silences further questions, but as you walk back together, she adds softly, "It helps to work, to learn. If I am useful, perhaps someday." She trails off, but her meaning is clear. Thralls can eventually gain freedom in Norse society, especially those who prove their value and adapt to their new culture. This brief, poignant glimpse into Flythe's perspective reminds you that history is lived by individuals with their own hopes, fears, and strategies for survival. Behind the broad strokes of historical events, invasions, conquests, cultural exchanges, are countless personal stories like hers, most forever unrecorded. As summer reaches its height, the Jarl calls another assembly, another thing, to discuss plans already forming for the following year. The success at Lindisfarne has undeniably whetted appetites for further raids, and information gathered during that expedition has revealed other tempting targets along the coasts of England, Scotland, and Ireland. "We should build more ships," one man argues during the discussion. 4 was enough for Lindisfarne, but if we target larger settlements or expect resistance, we'll need greater numbers. "And train more warriors," adds another. "Many young men who stayed behind this year are eager to join the next voyage." The debate continues, with various viewpoints expressed about priorities, strategies, and the delicate balance between raiding and the settlement's ongoing needs. Unlike modern political systems with clearly defined voting procedures, decisions here emerge through a process of discussion, persuasion, and gradual consensus building, with the Jarl having significant influence but not absolute authority. The assembly concludes with agreements to begin construction of 2 additional ships over the winter, to increase the training of young warriors, and to establish more formal relations with neighboring Norse settlements that might contribute to the expanded raiding fleet next summer. Resources from the Lindisfarne raid will fund much of this preparation, creating a self-reinforcing cycle that will fuel Viking expansion for generations to come. As autumn approaches, the pace of work intensifies dramatically. Harvests must be gathered, fish caught and preserved, meat smoked or salted, fruits and vegetables stored in ways that will keep them edible through the long, harsh northern winter. Every member of the community participates in this essential work, even children and the elderly, contributing according to their abilities. You find yourself drawn into these activities alongside your continuing work with Gunnar. There's a satisfying rhythm to the harvesting, the powerful swing of a scythe through golden grain, the rhythmic gathering of sheaves, the threshing that separates valuable kernels from the straw. Though physically demanding, the work happens in a social atmosphere, with songs, stories, and jokes helping to pass the time and lighten the labor. "This is how it's always been," the old skald tells you, as he rests in the shade, too frail now for heavy work, but contributing by entertaining the workers with his tales. "Since the time of our earliest ancestors, the gathering of the harvest has been both work and celebration, a time when the community comes together to ensure survival through the dark months ahead. As the days grow shorter and the air takes on the crispness of approaching winter, the settlement prepares for the winter solstice celebration, the time known as Yule in the Norse calendar. This festival marks the longest night of the year and the subsequent hopeful return of the sun, a crucial turning point both practically and spiritually. Preparations begin weeks in advance. Special foods are prepared, bread baked in ritual shapes, meat set aside from the autumn slaughter, ale brewed stronger than usual. The longhouses are cleaned thoroughly and decorated with evergreen boughs that symbolize life continuing through winter's apparent death. On the day of the solstice itself, activity begins before dawn and continues well into the night. A massive bonfire is built in the central gathering area, its towering flames symbolically strengthening the weakened sun. The Jarl sacrifices a boar to Freyr, the god associated with fertility and prosperity, asking for his blessing during the coming year. The community gathers for a feast even more lavish than the one that celebrated the raiders' return. Tables groan under the weight of food, roasted meats, preserved fruits, bread, cheese, and sweets made with precious honey. Ale and mead flow freely, their intoxicating effects considered part of the spiritual experience, a way of connecting with divine forces. Music, dance, and ritual blend together throughout the celebration. Children run laughing through the settlement with torches, symbolically bringing light back to the world. Couples slip away into the darkness, their unions during this sacred time believed to be especially blessed. Elders tell tales of the gods' own Yuletide celebrations in Asgard, creating parallels between divine and human experience. The vulva performs divination rituals, casting rune stones and interpreting their intricate patterns to foretell what the coming year will bring. Her prophecies are deliberately ambiguous. Good harvests if the gods are properly honored, successful raids if courage doesn't falter, health for those who maintain right relations with divine powers. These predictions offer both guidance and flexibility, allowing for adjustment based on future developments. Near midnight, at the depth of the longest darkness, a solemn ritual takes place. The Jarl and other leading men of the community take oaths on a sacred ring dedicated to Freyr, swearing to uphold laws, protect the settlement, and honor the gods in the year to come. These promises have both religious and social significance, binding the leadership to their responsibilities and reaffirming the community's shared values. Leif participates in this oath-taking, placing his hand on the ring and speaking words that commit him to specific actions in the coming year, including leading one of the ships in the planned, expanded raids. Eric watches with a mix of pride and longing, eager for the day when he, too, will be considered a man, able to take part in such rituals and expeditions. The Yule celebration continues for 3 days, gradually transitioning from formal religious observances to more relaxed socializing. Work is minimized during this time, with only essential tasks like tending animals performed. It's a welcome break before the deep winter sets in, bringing shorter days, colder temperatures, and the inevitable challenges of the season. Winter in the Viking settlement is a time of stark contrasts. Outside, the world seems dormant. Fields covered in snow, the fjords sometimes frozen near the shores, daylight lasting only a few precious hours. But inside the longhouses, life continues with surprising vigor and variety. This is the season for indoor crafts, weaving, carving, and the repair of tools and equipment. Men work on building components for the new ships, shaping strakes, and meticulously fashioning the fierce dragon heads that will adorn the prows come spring. Women spin and weave, turning raw wool into the fabric that will clothe the community. Children learn these skills alongside their parents, education happening through observation and gradually increasing participation rather than formal instruction. Evenings are devoted to storytelling, music, and games. The old skald shares tales of the gods and heroes, but also stories of the community's own ancestors, keeping their memory and deeds alive. People play board games like Nefatafel, a strategic challenge that simulates defense against attackers, or simple dice games that combine chance with wagers, adding excitement to long winter nights. You discover that the Norse are far from the uncultured barbarians often portrayed in later European writings. They have rich artistic traditions, expressed in exquisite wood carving, intricate metalwork, and sophisticated textile design. Their poetry follows complex structural rules, with careful attention to alliteration and rhythm. Their understanding of navigation, shipbuilding, and weather patterns reflects sophisticated observational science, even without formal scientific methods as you know them. The winter passes more quickly than you expected, each day filled with work, learning, and social interaction. You find your place within the community becoming more established, no longer a strange outsider, but someone with recognized skills and contributions to make. Gunnar speaks of taking you on as a formal apprentice when spring comes, a significant step that would give you a defined role and path toward eventual independence. But your growing integration into Norse society also brings complications. As you understand more of their language and customs, you're expected to participate more fully in all aspects of community life, including religious rituals that honor gods you know will eventually be displaced by Christianity, preparations for raids that will bring violence to innocent communities, and the everyday acceptance of thraldom that conflicts so deeply with your modern ethical principles. These tensions come to a head one evening when Leif, inspecting the growing pile of woodwork for his ship, speaks directly about your potential role in the coming raiding season.
"You've grown stronger since you came to us," he observes, watching you help move a newly carved oar into place. "Gunnar says you learn quickly. You could be useful on the ships this summer." The invitation, for that's what it is, despite the practical framing, catches you off guard. Participating in a Viking raid would grant you unprecedented historical insights, a direct, visceral experience of events usually known only through fragmented records and archaeological evidence. But it would also make you complicit in violence and theft, possibly even the taking of lives and liberty from people like Flytha. "I need to consider this," you reply carefully, acutely aware that refusing outright might damage your hard-won position in the community. "It's a significant opportunity," Leif nods, seeming to understand your hesitation, if not its exact nature. "Think on it. There's time yet before we must decide the ship's company." That night, sleep utterly eludes you as you ponder this profound dilemma. Your presence here hasn't changed the course of history. Lindisfarne was raided just as the historical record shows, and the expansion of Viking activity is proceeding as it did in the timeline you know. You are, you remind yourself, an observer to these events, not their cause. But joining a raid would cross a line from observation to direct participation in a way that feels profoundly troubling. Your thoughts are interrupted by a soft sound nearby. Rising on one elbow, you see Flytha sitting up on her sleeping bench, her face wet with silent tears. She doesn't notice your attention, lost in her own private grief, illuminated only by the faint, dying glow of the banked fire. The sight crystallizes your moral quandary. Real people suffered in the historical events unfolding around you. To participate would be to directly contribute to that suffering, regardless of how inevitable these events might be in the larger sweep of history. Before you can decide how to respond, whether to offer comfort to Flytha or pretend sleep to give her privacy in her grief, a more dramatic, terrifying interruption occurs. Horn blasts pierce the night, sharp, urgent, and unmistakable, the signal for danger or attack. Within moments, the longhouse erupts into frantic activity as Leif leaps up, reaching for his sword even as he calls for others to wake. "Raiders!" comes the shout from outside, a chilling cry. "From the south! 3 ships!" The bitter irony isn't lost on you, the raiders themselves facing a raid. This region of scattered settlements, with limited formal governance and wealth accumulated through both trade and plunder, creates a landscape where such attacks are always a possibility. Not all Norse are allies. Different groups compete for resources and prestige, sometimes violently. Leif is already strapping on his sword belt, his movements swift and decisive. "Eric, help your mother gather valuables. To the forest if they breach the settlement." He turns to you, his eyes hard. "Can you fight?" It's a moment of decision in more ways than one. Fighting to defend the community that has sheltered you feels different from participating in an offensive raid. But violence is violence, and you have no practice with Viking-era weapons. "I'll do what I can," you answer, a truthfully ambiguous statement that is, nevertheless, enough to satisfy Leif,
who nods and tosses you an axe. Not a specialized battle axe, but a common wood-cutting tool that can serve as a brutal weapon in an emergency. Outside, the settlement is a scene of organized chaos. Women and children gather essential supplies and prepare to retreat to predetermined hiding places in the surrounding forest, if necessary.
Men arm themselves and assemble into fighting groups, directed by the Jarl and other experienced warriors. Older boys run as messengers between groups, carrying orders and vital information. From the shore comes the terrifying sound of battle already joined. Shouts, the sharp clash of weapons, cries of pain and defiance. The attackers have beached their ships and are pushing into the settlement, facing resistance from those who were on watch or quick to respond. "They came with the late tide, using darkness for cover," reports a breathless messenger to the Jarl. 20 or 30 warriors at least." "Their target?" the Jarl demands, his face grim. "The hall, most likely," the messenger replies. "They know of our success at Lindisfarne." The Jarl nods grimly. "Then we defend the hall. Osgrim, take 10 men around to the western approach. Leif, your group holds the direct path. I'll lead the main defense at the hall itself." Leif gestures for those assigned to him, including you, to follow as he moves toward a position between the advancing raiders and the Jarl's hall. In the confusion of darkness, with only partial moonlight and scattered torches for illumination, it's hard to get a clear picture of what's happening. You stay close to Leif, your axe gripped tightly, your heart pounding with a dizzying combination of fear and unwanted excitement. "Hold together," Leif instructs the men with him, his voice low and steady. "Let them come to us. We know this ground. They don't." You take position behind a woodpile that offers some cover, while allowing you to see the path the raiders would likely take. Minutes stretch into what feels like hours as you wait, straining to interpret distant sounds of conflict, trying to judge how the battle is progressing elsewhere in the settlement. Then, suddenly, movement in the darkness ahead. Shapes moving quickly between buildings, trying to stay to the shadows. Leif signals for absolute silence, allowing the approaching group to draw closer before revealing your presence. When the raiders are just 20 paces away, Leif gives the signal. 3 archers with your group loose arrows, finding targets with practiced, deadly accuracy. 2 raiders fall immediately, their cries cut short. A third staggers, but keeps coming, a silhouette of determination. Then, it's close-quarters combat as the groups clash together. The violence is nothing like choreographed movie fights. It's chaotic, desperate, brutally direct. Men aim for killing blows immediately, without the extended dueling seen in films. A sword thrust to the gut, an axe to the neck or face, a spear driven through a thigh to bring an opponent down for a finishing blow. The fighting is quick, savage, and terrifyingly efficient. You hang back, overwhelmed by the visceral reality of combat, until a raider breaks through the line and charges directly at you. Instinct takes over as you swing your axe, aiming more to create distance than to strike a lethal blow. The axe head catches the man's upraised arm, cutting deeply. He howls in pain but keeps coming, sword raised in his other hand. Before he can reach you, Eric, who was supposed to be helping his mother but obviously slipped away to join the fighting, appears from nowhere and drives a short spear into the raider's side. The man crumples, his sword falling harmlessly to the ground. Eric stands frozen, eyes wide with shock at what he's done. This is clearly his first kill, a moment both traumatic and, in this society, profoundly transformative. You pull him back to safety as the fighting continues around you, his face pale in the moonlight, breath coming in short, ragged gasps. I killed him," the boy stammers, part horror, part disbelieving pride.
"You saved me," you reply, holding his shoulders steady. "Breathe. Stay focused. We're still in danger." The warning is timely. Another wave of raiders is approaching, having pushed through defenses elsewhere. Leif and the remaining men in your group fall back toward the Jarl's hall, where the main defense is centered. You keep Eric close as you retreat, watching for attacks from the sides or rear. The hall itself has been prepared for defense, with shields reinforcing the walls and men positioned at all potential entry points. You join the defenders inside, where the Jarl is directing operations with calm authority, despite blood staining one sleeve from a wound already received. "They're after our Lindisfarne treasure," he tells the assembled men, his voice strong. "Perhaps they think we're still celebrating Yule, our guard down and our reflexes dulled by ale. They'll learn differently before this night ends." His confidence is justified. While the raiders have the advantage of surprise, the defenders have superior numbers, intimate knowledge of the terrain, and the powerful motivation of protecting their homes and families. The battle rages for perhaps an hour before the attackers, suffering significant casualties and making little headway against the organized defense, begin to withdraw. "They're returning to their ships," comes the cry from outside. "They flee!" There's no immediate celebration. It could be a trick, or the raiders might regroup for another attempt. The Jarl orders continued vigilance, sending scouts to confirm the enemy's retreat and search for any who might be hiding within the settlement. Dawn reveals the grim cost of the night's conflict. 6 defenders lie dead, their lives taken protecting their home, with another dozen nursing wounds of varying severity. The raiders left 8 of their own dead behind, plus 2 so badly wounded they couldn't be moved. Now captives, who will likely become thralls if they survive their injuries. The settlement has suffered damage as well. Several buildings burned, stored goods stolen or destroyed, animals killed or scattered. But the main target, the wealth from Lindisfarne kept in the Jarl's hall, remains secure. A somber ceremony is held for the fallen defenders. Their bodies are prepared for burial, with their weapons and personal items, as befits warriors who died protecting their community. The Jarl speaks of each man individually, recounting his virtues and contributions, ensuring his memory will be preserved in the community's oral history. "They feast in Valhalla now," the Jarl concludes, his voice ringing with pride and sorrow. "Honored guests at Odin's table, their courage will inspire us as we rebuild what was damaged and strengthen our defenses against future attacks." Eric, now publicly acknowledged for his first kill despite his young age, stands taller during the ceremony. The traumatic experience has aged him, pushing him more rapidly toward adult status in a society where martial prowess is highly valued. Leif watches his son with a complex expression, pride mingled with a parent's natural concern, a recognition that the boy is changing irrevocably. In the days that follow, the settlement repairs physical damage while processing the profound emotional impact of the attack. The experience has shaken assumptions of security, leading to increased emphasis on defenses, more regular watches, improvements to the simple palisade that surrounds the central area, better systems for raising alarm. It also accelerates preparations for the coming raiding season. We've seen what happens to those who grow wealthy without the strength to protect their riches, the Jarl points out during an assembly called to adjust plans. We must be both prosperous and powerful, feared enough that others think twice before attacking us. There's a stark logic to this perspective. Given the realities of the era, with no overarching government to provide security and enforce laws, communities must essentially protect themselves or become victims. The same ships that enable trade and raiding serve as deterrents when visible in a settlement's harbor, signs of strength and mobility that potential attackers must consider. For you personally, the raid brings unexpected clarity. Experiencing violence directly, both the threat to yourself and witnessing the killing around you, crystallizes your feelings about participating in the upcoming expeditions. When Leif again raises the possibility, you have a ready answer. "I'm grateful for the offer," you tell him, choosing words carefully to avoid offense. "But I believe I serve better here, continuing my work with Gunnar, helping maintain what's needed at home."
Rather than disappointment, Leif shows understanding. Not everyone is meant for the raiding life, he acknowledges. The settlement needs skilled crafters as much as warriors. Gunnar speaks well of your progress. This conversation marks a turning point in your relationship with the Norse community. By making a clear choice about your role, you've moved from ambiguous outsider to someone with a defined place in the social structure. You're becoming, in their eyes and perhaps to some degree in your own mind, part of their world, rather than merely an observer passing through. Spring advances, bringing longer days, milder weather, and renewed activity throughout the settlement. Fields are prepared for planting. Fishing increases as the fjord becomes more navigable, and construction of the new ships proceeds rapidly. Now that the wood has been properly seasoned over winter, the vessels take shape on the shore, longer and more imposing than the existing fleet, designed specifically for the dual purposes of raiding and transporting significant cargo back home. Their dragon-head prows are carved with particular ferocity, intended to strike fear into those who see them approaching hostile shores. By late spring, the expanded fleet stands ready. 6 ships that can carry nearly 200 warriors, along with supplies for an extended journey. The planned raids are more ambitious than the previous year's expedition, targeting not just isolated monasteries, but also trading centers where greater wealth might be found. Leif will captain one of the ships, his navigational skills too valuable to leave behind. Despite Astrid's obvious concern about him departing again, Eric, though eager to join the raiders, is still considered too young, a judgment that leads to bitter arguments until Leif finally puts his foot down with uncharacteristic sharpness. "The farm needs you," he tells his son firmly. "Your mother needs you. Prove yourself capable of these responsibilities, and next year we'll speak again of raiding." As departure day approaches, you find yourself drawn into the preparations despite your decision not to sail. Gunnar has you working long hours to complete needed metalwork, repairs to existing weapons, fittings for the new ships, tools that will be useful during the voyage. The forge burns continuously, and your skills are tested to their limits by the variety and volume of work required. On the evening before the ships are to depart, a ritual similar to the previous years takes place. The vulva performs sacrifices. Blood is sprinkled on the assembled warriors, and oaths are taken to ensure proper behavior during the expedition. But there's a distinct difference in tone. Less uncertainty, more confidence born of previous success and expanded capabilities. "The gods favored us before," the Jarl declares, his voice ringing out, "and they will favor us again if we prove worthy of their blessing. We sail not just for ourselves, but for our families, our settlement, our ancestors who watch us from Odin's hall. Let every warrior remember this. Your deeds across the sea will echo here at home, bringing either honor or shame to your name and lineage." The departure itself, witnessed at dawn the next day, is an impressive spectacle. 6 dragon ships, their sails catching the early light as they move into the deeper waters of the fjord, oars rising and falling in perfect unison, carry men whose faces mix excitement, determination, and, in some cases, apprehension about what lies ahead. You stand with Astrid, Eric, and others remaining behind, watching until the ships disappear around a bend in the fjord.
An odd silence falls over the gathering after the last vessel vanishes from sight. A communal exhalation as tension breaks, followed by the gradual resumption of conversation as people turn to the tasks that will occupy them during the men's absence. "And now we wait," Astrid says simply, her expression composed despite the concern you know she feels. "And we work, and we prepare for their return, as women have always done when men seek glory in distant places." Her words capture an essential aspect of Norse society during the Viking Age, the division of roles that sends men to raid foreign shores, while women maintain the home community. Each gender operates within its own sphere of power and responsibility, a partnership of necessity, born of harsh conditions and limited resources that shapes family structures, social organizations, and individual lives. Throughout this era, life in the settlement settles into a pattern similar to the previous year's routine. During the raiders' absence, fields are tended, fishing continues, crafts are practiced, and children are raised with the constant awareness that survival depends on everyone contributing according to their abilities. The community naturally reorganizes itself around those who remain, with older men, adolescent boys, and women taking on leadership roles, usually held by the absent warriors. You continue your apprenticeship with Gunnar, your skills advancing to the point where you can now complete simpler projects independently. There's deep satisfaction in this progress, in creating objects of both beauty and function with your own hands, in knowing your work contributes tangibly to the community's welfare. Weeks pass with no word from the raiding fleet, which is expected. There's no postal service or communication system that could bring messages from distant shores. Everyone understands that news will come only with the ships themselves, hopefully laden with new wealth, but possibly bearing tidings of loss and failure. Then, on a clear summer day, when many people are working in the fields, the lookout boy stationed at the fjord's entrance gives the signal. "Ships approaching! Sails visible on the horizon!" The community mobilizes quickly, work abandoned as people hurry to the shore to see which vessels return and who they carry. As the ships draw closer, a cheer rises from the crowd. All 6 vessels are accounted for, their dragon prows cutting proudly through the water as they make their final approach to home. The raiders have returned, apparently successful in their ventures across the sea. But there's something different about this homecoming. The ships carry not just plunder, but also what appear to be household goods and additional people, women and children, as well as the expected thralls. And among the warriors, some show signs of injuries more serious than typically sustained in short raids, suggesting extended fighting, or possibly even battles against organized resistance. As the vessels beach and the warriors disembark, it becomes clear that this expedition differed significantly from the previous year's quick attack on Lindisfarne. Leif, thinner than when he left, but otherwise unharmed, embraces Astrid and Eric before turning to include you in his greeting. "We've much to tell," he says, his expression suggesting experiences both triumphant and sobering. "This journey has changed everything." And as the returned raiders share their tales in the celebration that follows, you begin to understand just how significant this expedition has been. They raided not just monasteries, but coastal settlements, penetrating deeper into territories that had never before seen Norse ships. They established a winter camp on a small island off the Scottish coast, using it as a base for continued operations rather than immediately returning home. Most importantly, they've brought back not just plunder, but knowledge. Detailed information about lands, peoples, defenses, and opportunities that will inform Norse expansion for generations to come. The Viking Age is now truly underway, moving beyond isolated raids to a systematic exploration and exploitation of territories across the North Sea and beyond. That night, as tales are shared around fires throughout the settlement, you realize you're witnessing history unfold in real time. The profound transformation of Norse society through contact with outside cultures. The beginning of changes that will eventually lead to the Norman conquest of England, the settlement of Iceland and Greenland, even the first European discovery of North America, centuries before Columbus.
The world is changing around you, shaped by dragon ships and the ambitious men who sail them, by the communities that support those voyages, and by the complex interplay of necessity, opportunity, courage, and cruelty that drives human history forward. This isn't merely a recounting of voyages. It is an invitation to feel the biting wind on the open sea, to hear the groan of timber under an indifferent sky, and to witness the raw courage and stark brutality that defined an age. Here, the allure of uncharted territories beckoned, with promises of new resources and fresh starts, yet always shadowed by the ever-present threat of the unknown. Savage storms, formidable ice flows, and encounters with peoples whose very existence challenged familiar worldviews. Every longship cutting through the waves carried not just ambitious warriors and resourceful settlers, but the very essence of human striving, a testament to an indomitable will to push beyond the horizon, to etch new chapters into the annals of a world rapidly becoming larger and far more perilous than anyone had previously dared to imagine. It is a time where legend and reality intermingle, where the destinies of individuals and nascent nations alike are forged in the crucible of exploration and fraught with both breathtaking triumphs and crushing despair. The echoes of these daring expeditions reverberate far beyond the crashing waves and distant shores, penetrating the very heart of the societies that spawned them. Villages once defined by their quiet self-sufficiency transformed into bustling hubs of innovation and industry. Shipyards along fjords became cauldrons of activity, where master builders crafted the sleek longships that defied the elements, their designs whispers of advanced navigation and unparalleled endurance. The very air thrummed with the anticipation of new discoveries and the raw energy of ambition. For those who stayed behind, life was equally transformed. Women managed homesteads and farms, their resilience a silent testament to the fortitude required of a seafaring people. The wisdom of elders, once rooted solely in local traditions, now intertwined with fragmented tales of foreign lands, exotic goods, and unfamiliar beliefs. Every departure was a poignant gamble, every return a mixture of jubilation and sorrow, laden with new treasures, new stories, and sometimes new grievances. This intricate tapestry of human experience, the hunger for what lies beyond, the cost of reaching it, and the profound impact on both the conqueror and the conquered, continuously propelled their world, and indeed our shared history, along an irreversible course. The world was not merely changing, it was being fundamentally remade, one voyage, one settlement, one raid at a time, forging connections and conflicts that would ripple through centuries to come.